We're back, and we are COMP2007 Enterprise Computing, and it's the summer 2016 semester, which it is week 3, part 2 of our broadcast, and we just finished off making a user control. Again, we're in user controls in our PowerPoint presentation here. So if you notice, we've just finished making this nav bar control, and we did it page-wide, but because we put it in our site master, it's site-wide. Right? Because any pages that use it, so far both my pages use the same nav bar. So discussions. I mean, some people don't like Microsoft. I'm put it out there. You know, it's okay. But one day, again, I really truly believe, and I said this earlier in the first class, we're going to transcend the hardware. Okay? Don't worry about the hardware that you're using right now. One day it won't be an issue. You know, because it won't be a Mac or a Windows machine or something else. We won't have machines. Everything will be in the cloud, right? At some point in the future. I know you're laughing, but truly it's going to be the server-client architecture like it used to be back 30 years ago with dumb terminals. And our terminal is going to be the brain, right? Or some kind of, you know, wearable technology. Yes, it's scary, right? And there's some really good books on it too. But don't worry about these things. Don't worry about being, you know, preferring one system over another. You should be able to switch between Linux or OS 10 or you know, or Microsoft Windows. It doesn't really matter. You shouldn't care. You should be able to operate in any environment that you're thrown into. If you're asked to do a web app, mobile app, native app, whatever, you should be able to do it. And the stuff that you're learning here are the foundations for what you can do to use anything else. One thing I'd like you to look at, because I like talking about this stuff just as an aside, is Electron, right? Electron, you like open source tools, you like Node and that whole framework, and you want to make your own apps that are cross-platform, but that are also hybrid. You want to use HTML5 and CSS3 and JavaScript technologies that you know and love. Well, you can do that, and Electron, of course, are the people that made Visual Studio Code and Slack, right? So, I mean, to me, it's the way to go if you want to make a native app. Take a look at Electron. It's really progressed a lot, and you can make some native apps for all operating systems. Slack. I want to mention something about Slack. When you work with your partner on your project, in a week or so, you're going to start working on your project. Slack is a great way to communicate with you and teams and people in your team. You can set up your own channel. It reminds me a lot of IRC. Back in the day, we used to use IRC when I was a young man. And it's kind of like that now, right? So take a look at Slack as a way to communicate with one another. It's kind of cool, and it's free, right? You can install it on your phone for notifications. It allows you messaging. It ties in nicely with Hangouts. There's a bunch of plugins. It's definitely something that I would look into. The other thing is, some people are going to start doing their website, their portfolio site, and they don't have one because they're teleporting into this course out of sequence. Like, you know, maybe you didn't do your portfolio site last semester, and I'm asking you to do one today. So what do I require from you? Because it's going to be required, right? So one of the things that I want you to think about is it's all about you, right? Certainly, if you have material from last semester, you can use that material, images and so on. One thing I'm going to ask you not to do is please don't try and make a single-page application. That's POP, right? We don't want you to do that in this scenario. This is an example site for your assignment number 1 of the stuff you're going to be building to get you working and solving problems with ASP.NET Web Forms. You're going to have problems. You're going to encounter stuff like my images aren't working, right? My geo, links, things like with Google Maps, not working, right? With ASP.NET Web Forms on Microsoft Azure. Why not, right? I want you to figure it out. This is why you're doing this little 5% assignment. Don't kill yourself. You should have your content, but you should try and figure out these problems that come up because we learn by doing, right? Yeah, certainly you can watch somebody else, but I think it's always better to do yourself, fail, and then learn and go from there. But on to portfolio for a second. I want 5 pages for your portfolio site, right? So it's got to be your home page, which includes something about you at a very high level. Again, some people use some kind of jumbotron to kind of, with some features, featurettes about their projects, some kind of hero button that points at their projects, something else that makes it very interesting. You can do that, but your homepage should all be about you, and a quick way to get connected with you. Some people put their images on their front page as well, and usually it's a different image than the one they put on their bio page, right? Speaking of the bio page, you can call it bio or about us, and again, you're going to put stuff on the bio page that's all about you. I want you to put your picture on there. You're going to have your picture, your image. Please don't use an avatar, okay? Don't use some kind of animation or something weird like that to represent you. It's you. It's about you. A short version of your CV. So something like talk about your essay, your resume, but don't give me your whole resume. If you really want to share your resume with everybody that comes onto your site, put it into a link, okay? Like as a PDF or something like that. Please don't include your resume in full detail. That's really, boring to look at, frankly. And no one really wants to see that. They want to see short bullet points about you. All right, what your experience, about what you're interested in doing, a little bit about getting to know you, and if they want to work with you. Okay, that's what should be in your bio page. By the way, if you already have a portfolio site, there's nothing wrong with adjusting it a little bit and adding some of the suggestions I'm recommending here. Modifying things as we go, and we can always put it back to your real page. You're going to have a real portfolio page somewhere out there, not this ASP.NET web forms monster, right? That's okay. Things you learn here, you can always port over there, right? Nothing wrong with that. So that's your bio page. And also, some people put contact me links throughout their pages, almost like a short social networking section, or like a little box that allows you to connect through LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever you like to. Hopefully, it's a sanitized version of your Facebook account, right? It doesn't show you drinking your head off or anything like that. Anything worse than that. Anyway, so those kind of things is what I include. And then also, you have your projects page and your services page. Your projects page should really include things like 3 of your projects. We talked about this before. That kind of give you an image of your project they can click on, almost like an image button. Click on the image button. It goes to your project details if you want them, or a predetermined or dedicated project page if you want to go there. That's what it should be like, right? Maybe at the very least some kind of image and some text around your project, what you built, to show off to you potential employers, that kind of stuff. So 3 of those. A services page that says, this is what I like to do. I want to build websites. I want to build, I'm a maker. I'm involved in the IoT side of things. Whatever you like to do, put it in there. And the projects, you don't have to have projects that are just web projects or programming projects. It can be whatever project you want, right? Watch the personal stuff, all right? When you make, comments about who you are, the more you expose, remember, you expose who you are, and there's also a security concern. People say, do I really want to expose my contact information on my contact page, where I live and all that stuff? Well, it's up to you. But at the very least, put your contact number. That's not going to hurt, right? As well as a contact form that connects you with the other people. Don't expose your email address, all right? Whatever you do, don't put in Tom at, whatever my Hotmail, don't do that, right? Because otherwise, if you put your stuff on a website, someone can bomb you with emails. You don't want that, spam you and stuff. Forget it. Never expose, or your client, never expose their email address. At the very least, use some kind of CAPTCHA, reCAPTCHA kind of engine, even when it comes to some kind of form, to prevent bots from doing that for you. Just simple security stuff we're talking about, right? So from a contact form perspective, have a contact form for your assignment. Number 1, does it have to be working? No, it doesn't, all right? It's all around getting to know web forms, right? Can you make it work? Yes, you can. You can use SendGrid. Can you use SendGrid with your DreamSpark? No, you can't, right? So you need to use a pay-as-you-go account just for SendGrid, or you need to use something else. Can you link your pay-as-you-go to your DreamSpark? Yes, you can, right? So it's a matter of how you want to do things, and there are other free ways of doing it online. You have to investigate for the bonus points. That's why it's bonus. It's not something that you're required to do, right? So again, 5 pages: your home page, projects, services, about me, and then your contact page. Your contact page probably should include some social media at this point, whether it's Twitch if you're a gamer, or some kind of videos you made, or whatever is related to your social media. LinkedIn probably, unless you're hacked, right? That would be bad, right? We have hacks lately, right? Those kind of things should be, contact me. And there's many ways you can create things, but that's what I'm looking for from assignment 1. All right. Any questions around assignment 1? I know some people said I never did a portfolio site. I don't know what to do. This is what you need to do. I'm recording it here so you can hear it, so you can always go back and take care of that. Onwards and upwards. Back to this. So we did this, navbar custom control. I like it, right? I like it. And we also did a code behind file. That's really, really cool. And we added it into my navbar, there's kind of this little tag here that I put in. Okay. Now, let's go back to your requirements. If you look at the requirements up on Blackboard, it says, let's do some checks. User control that defines a custom navbar server control. Check. User control that defines a custom Jumbotron server control. No. Let's do that next. So Jumbotron is what we're doing next. Let's try this out. I'm going to go to Solution Explorer. We're going to have a problem with this one. And I want you guys to see if there's a solution, all right? So what I want to do, here's my problem. So this is what the client's going to say. I want you to make a custom control that I can actually input additional elements, HTML elements, inside of it after I've made it. Can you do it? The answer is yes and no, right? Just putting it out there, right? So how do I do that? I'll right-click on my user controls. That's where it's going to go. I'm going to go to Add. And now that I've done a user control before, it should appear in your quick hits, your favorites or whatever. If it doesn't, you can always go here to new item like we did last time. But for now, it is here, so I'll just press this, Web Forms User Control, add that in. And we're going to call this Jumbotron. Now, it's not going to be a regular Jumbotron, otherwise that would be really boring, right? And where does this Jumbotron come from? Well, it comes from Bootstrap. So if I go BS-Jumbotron, press Tab, I get all this stuff, right? This is good. This is where I'm getting it from, Jumbotron, right? And Jumbotron is like this big box, kind of in gray or other colors, whatever you want to choose, that kind of comes in your page. That's nice. Notice that there's an H1 heading. I don't want, that doesn't make any sense that I would put the heading inside my user control, does it? Because then, I don't know, it's weird. That means it'll always be set. And if I want to use this project as a template, I'd have to kind of change my stuff in my Jumbotron all the time. So what I really want to do is make my Jumbotron, style it a little different than this, right? And then inject my H1 tag inside there, right, somehow. Okay, we're also going to make this control site-wide, so I can use my Jumbotron on any page I want, right? Not just my default page. How do I do that? First, let's get rid of this. We don't need this. And I also want to take advantage of Bootstrap's other things, things that they can do in Bootstrap, separate from what I've been doing before. So again, I want to go something like div with a class of container-fluid, right? And then inside my container fluid means that it's going to be like pretty wide. It won't add so much margin as before. Container fluid. Inside my container fluid is where I want to put my row. So div-row. Inside my div row, I want to put in a class of div call-md-offset. So a medium offset of probably 2, not too much margin on the side. So I want to make my Jumbotron pretty wide, right? And then column-medium-8. So 8 columns I want for my Jumbotron, right? And then inside there's when I want to put my Jumbotron control, right? So let's just tab. And then inside here, I want to put my Jumbotron control, this little thing here. Cut it. So you can see this is the advantage of making my custom Jumbotron. It's going to be my Jumbotron. It's not going to be the Jumbotron that exists with Bootstrap. It's going to be slightly different, right? And this is a reusable control we're going to use maybe in other pages. We can use it for different reasons. So what I want is, instead of putting my H1 tag in there, I want to inject whatever I want. Having trouble with this, okay, having trouble. So here's some techniques. Actually, let me show you the errors first, and then we'll talk about techniques, right? So first of all, I want to declare this thing as a site-wide control, not a page control like we did with our site master. Site master, we did a page-level control because we used the @register directive at the top of my site master. You can do this in any page, @register, and then whatever the control is called, tag name and tag prefix and all that stuff. I want to do the same thing, but I want to use my web config file to do that. So if I click on web config, you can see that I have a bunch of XML. Now where it belongs is inside my system.web, right, tag. So inside system.web is where I want to put my control, okay? If you want to look at your PowerPoint to follow along, right, all I'm doing is I've already done this piece, right? Talked about my events that each user control can raise. It also talks about how to add what the top of the directive looks like. It's the @control directive inside each user control. So it's different than the @master or @page directive, right? So it's @control. And this is how you get it. It talks about all that stuff. These are things we've already done. I'm not going to go into it. And then, of course, from a page-wide, right, the first step is registering your control on the page. But we don't want to do it this way, right? We want to register it in our web config file. And you need to do it like this. Add pages and controls inside our web config file. So in here, we're going to say pages. So pages. Inside pages, we're going to go controls. There we go. Now inside controls, we're going to put add. Notice what it says. It says, okay, so what control I'm going to add. So back to source, right? So here's my source. Notice that there's no IntelliSense for source. How could I figure this out? Well, to give us a hint of what it's going to be like, if I look at my site master, how it uses navbar, it's going to have this form. So let's just copy this for now, right? Because there is no IntelliSense inside my web config, and pop it in there. But instead of user controls navbar, it's user controls jumbotron, right? So that's the first piece. Next is a couple of. If I press tab, I want to use tag name, right? So tag name is important. We're going to call this jumbotron, of course. Right? And then, oops, we want to use tag prefix, lowercase. I'm going to take this away for a second. And my tag prefix, of course, is going to be BS3, just like we did before. So that is the way, that's what you put in there. Now, this is a configuration change that we've made to our web.config file. Good idea to build my project, right? Sometimes we need to clean my project and rebuild my project, but it's a good idea to do that. Otherwise, sometimes it doesn't find the control. Okay, now that I've done that, it's available everywhere. Anywhere on my site, my control, I can drag and drop it, good to go. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So let's go to my Solution Explorer. Let's go to my default page, which is where I want my Jumbotron to appear. I don't care about this content anymore, this div class container, blah, 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 right? And I want to drag and drop my Jumbotron from here onto my page, like this. Drag and drop. Okay. Nice and fast, nice and easy, nice and beautiful, right? However, what I really want, just pointing this out for you guys to see, right, is if I go to, oops, sorry, see how it closes it off right away. Look, it doesn't allow me to do the second tag. I can't do one of these. Can't go like Jumbotron, BS3, Jumbotron. What I want to do is one of these, right? BS3 Jumbotron. So a closing tag, get rid of this. I can do this. I can set up I just have to ignore the IntelliSense. What I really want to do is inside my Jumbotron, I want to put in an H1 tag. H1, right? And inside my H1 tag, I want to say something like, welcome. I can put whatever content I want. This is the error that I'm getting. It says, content is not allowed between the opening and closing tags for element Jumbotron. Okay? I like that. I don't mind the error, but it tells me there's a problem, right? And I know there's going to be a problem. When I build this thing out, this is what it's going to look like. So I play this thing out, and I get the following error. You'll see it in a second. So here's your challenge. How do I do it? Now, there's a couple ways of doing this thing. One of them is nesting controls. This is my error, right? And it says here, type ASP user controls Jumbotron ASCX does not have a public property name H1. Public property name H1. That sounds like it's a C# thing, right? Where I have to declare an H1 property, and I could programmatically inject my H1. It could, but it's really weird, right? Because I would say something like, I create an H1 element with nothing inside of it. I can create a tag name, like an ID, you know, first H1 or whatever, then use my C# to inject the text inside of it. Yeah, I could do that, but ugly, right? What I want is this, just like we do when we have other server controls. This is one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is if we do nested server controls. So got my H1, you know, kind of thing. I don't want to put it in here, right? I want to nest my server controls, but then I got to make a H1 server control, like some kind of weird custom H1, you know, server control. It doesn't speak to me much, right? So I don't want to do that right now because it doesn't make semantic sense in my mind, right? I want to do this, and someone suggested from the first class. I'll give you his, you know, the suggestions that he gave me. He sent me this text, and by the way, I'll leave it to you guys. Maybe you guys can find a solution as well, right? So what I want and what I'm getting, of course, sometimes are two different things, and sometimes you can't do certain things that you want to do. So we got so Chris Naismith, right, from first class, he said, hey, Tom, why don't we do something like this? So this is what he sent me. See if I can type it in for you. So I'm going to go back to my default, to my Jumbotron ASX file, right? This is it. And I want to go to my Jumbotron ASX, ACSX.cs file, right? It's my code behind file. And inside there, under my partial class Jumbotron, which is my custom control, I want to put the following things. You can try this out. So it's parse, and it's parse children, and we're going to say false. Okay, very interesting. And it says initialize the new contained within the server control as properties. Okay, I like that. And we seem to be able to do this properly, yeah? So parse, instead of parse children, you want to do persist children, true. Right, and he said that would fix it. Yes and no. It doesn't, it doesn't. And we'll see what it does. So if I try this, save it here. So I've just got these little two filters. That's what these things are. They're actually called filters or decorators, all right, in some ways. If I go back to my my default ASPX, and if I build my solution, right? Remember that I've made a change to the code behind file in my Jumbotron ASCX file, right? Now it's showing me that I'm getting an error, but I got to give IntelliSense a chance because sometimes that error will disappear. Let's run this thing and see what I'm getting now, right? If I still get the problem. Chris is a smart guy, right? And I like how you looked that up, but it doesn't solve our problem. Right? Yes?
I know it's more like this, right? But pretty much like every issue that every issue like that doesn't have to do
Explain. Look what I get. Did I get what I wanted? No, almost. I almost got what I wanted. I got welcome, but it's outside of my Jumbotron, right? Let's take a look. So this is what I really get. So here's my page source. It did it, right? But not exactly what I wanted. So if I look at page source, you can see that here's my Jumbotron, right here, and then here's welcome. So it populated it after everything else. I want it inside everything else. So what were you saying? How would you do it?
It's possible to define a custom property with user control, and then you just pass that property from your PC to that.
You could. You could do it. I mean, I could do that same thing. Like what Rich suggested when I brought it to him, right? Because it's something we talked about was if I was to, instead of doing it this way, let's just get rid of that stuff. Because that obviously is not a solution. This, not a solution. Neat, right? But I want it to go somewhere else. Probably what I want is to declare some kind of type or variable, right? Or I want to get a hook, like I said before, into my Jumbotron instance, right? So I can define an H1 tag that's empty, like this, right? Just like we normally would do. And then in my H1 tag, I want to search for an ID, just like we did before. So I create an ID called, you know, Jumbotron H1 or something like that, right? So let's type it in, Jumbotron H1. Here's my ID, right? And of course, we got to run at the server. Run at is equal to server, right? When I do this, right, what I'm doing is actually I'm creating the same ID, Jumbotron H1, that's available to me inside my asx.cs file, right? So in here, in my asx.cs file, I could do something like this. I could say unload, like similar to what you were saying. I could say, well, my Jumbotron H1, here's my Jumbotron H1. Now notice both things are available, right? Both my Jumbotron, HTML element plus my Jumbotron H1 control is available. If I do this one, and if I do like, remember it has a lot of things. I want to inject text inside of here, right? So it has find control. I have an ID, page, parent, all kinds of stuff. Skin ID, site. Do I have text as an option? No, I don't have text. But I want to insert. Inside my my file. It wouldn't be attributes, right? Because that's not it. So how would I do it? How do I inject inside of my H1 tag? How do I do that? Yeah, I did this one time. Yeah. Value and then dot add. Well, what's my key value pairs that I'm adding? Not an attribute. Oh, you're right. The value would be the text. Yeah, but my H1 tag doesn't have a value. Paragraph is the same thing. I wouldn't have that, right? So this is data bind, dispose, this kind of stuff, equals, find control, get hash code, get type. All these things are available to me, right? And inner text is what I want. This one here, inner text. So if I go inner text, right, and I want to say is equal to, welcome to my website. Okay. How about just welcome for now? If I did it this way, Jumbotron H1 inner text, right? And if I put a semicolon, like a good C# person should do, right? Then when I run this thing, right? When I run this thing, I'll have my welcome. But it's in code, man. I'm injecting my H1. I'm injecting my HTML. It's not a happy solution for me, right? Happy solution would be I should be able to code it with HTML. I should be able to code it with HTML. Does not have a property of H1. Wait a minute. What did I do wrong? That should totally work. Okay. Because I did. I put a property of H1 in my default. Did I not save it? Oh. Cut. I don't need it there anymore because I got it in here, right? Let's save it and run it. I just left it there by accident. There we go. So if I do this, you can see that when I go back, it's going to work like expected because I'm taking my inner HTML or inner text and popping in welcome, right? So it looks like I've got control. And it is different components because it's separate, but it doesn't make me happy, right? Happiness for me would be putting in whatever tag I want inside there. Because now, do I have to pre-populate this thing with tags and everything else? I guess I could, but now it becomes less of a reusable component and more of a burden. I might as well just type it by hand, right? We don't want your components that we're making to be burden, a burden on you. We want this to be helpful so we can reuse this over and over again, right? Make sense? So that's what I want to do. And so I leave it to you. I want to see if you can figure it out. This would do for your lab 2. This is okay if you did it my way, okay? I don't mind if you do it this way, inject it in, or even if you typed it in by yourself, like actually hard-coded it in your, because it's like this, what I just did, is just like doing, it's just like putting in my H1, my details of my H1 right here. I'm actually taking this, right? And I'm going the long way around, putting it on the server side, but I can just plop it right in here, welcome, right? So I might as well just put the welcome in here if I want, right? And type everything inside here. On the good side, you can look at this user control. If I want to look at, I want to be on the bright side here. On the bright side, I am still compartmentalizing, right? I'm still creating a component, which is a Jumbotron in a separate file. So I'm breaking up my files into separate sections. Like for example, I could make my own user control that's a header or a footer and define my header and footer in different ways. If they're fixed and they're not moving, got to think about, will I ever reuse these things again, right? But this is fine. This will suffice for now. Okay, we've got everything we need. One thing we're missing now is my configuration for my my contact page. I didn't have a chance to get to this in the first class, and somehow I find myself having a whole hour now, right? That's what happens. The first one you record the first time, whew, it takes extra time. Now I got lots of time. So let's talk about this. I want to talk about site validation or user validation for our, with our validation controls, and I want to do it with my contact page, right? So contact page is here. This is nice beginning, but I want to import here my own custom form, right? There's two ways to do this. I could impart my entire form in here. So I just do it one time and it's done, right? Or, which might be better, if I made additional user controls that are smaller pieces. Why? Because my form is going to have two pieces. The label, which is not going to be an ASPX control. It's going to be a regular label, HTML label. And there's going to be the other piece, which is my text box, right? So I almost want to make my own text box or group text box or whatever you want to call it. So I can just put it in a bunch of text boxes. But just like going back to what you said, right? There's other values that I want to put in there, like my for. Think about what we're doing here. You know, I want to think about putting together the form. So here's what it's going to look like. Remember that I have a BS-form group, form-group that I want to put together. So here's my BS form group, right? So this is what I want to take. I want to take this and make those 4 lines into a user control. So I can make it 1 line, right? And then if I modify that user control, I'm going to look at, I'm repeating myself here over and over again, right? Every time I do this, I'm repeating. Where if I do it in a user control, I can put all the details I want in here. I don't have to repeat myself all the time. I mean, it's just the user control, so it becomes more compartmentalized again. Okay. But for now, let's leave it as is. So class is control label, right? For is form group input. And it's my label. We're going to put in this, like, we're going to make a form like we did before. We're going to say first name, right? It's my first name. And my form group input is the ID. Well, we're going to change this input into a text box like we did last time. So let's do that. So I'll say ASP text box. That's what it is, right? With a run at server, right? We need that. So run at is equal to server, right? There's my server. We need that component. And my ID is what we have here. Here's my ID, right? Type text, remember that didn't work? What do we use here? We use something else here instead of type text, right? Let's go over here and change this form group input to first name label, first name text box. Sorry, it's going a little long outside. Let me see if I can make this a little smaller. There we go. And the other thing is I need a closing tag, right? I can't do it like this. So I need a closing tag, and Visual Studio offers me one. There we go. So you see, my placeholder would be, instead of my label, would be first name, right? That would be my placeholder, or enter first name or whatever would be there, right? Class wouldn't be class, it would be CSS class, right? So type that in, so CSS class, got to be like added in like this. Type wouldn't be type, we would take it out because the default client mode, right, is text. We don't have to change that. So get rid of this. Okay. And that's my first label, right? My first label for control label. It's part of my form group. I'm using my form control, and we have a beautiful little box, little text box. Okay, I want to do this over and over again, and you're going to see this is why. Remember, we call it code reuse. I don't want to reuse this over and over again and just change some stuff. I would love to use a user control. I will leave it to you to experiment with. So copy, paste. Let's try this out. So I want to put my form control there, and here's my last name, right? Obviously, this would be last name text box. So I'm going to copy this and put it here. We've seen this before. I'm doing it again to give you another idea of how to do it. Techniques, right? It's all around techniques. Last name text box, last name text box, last name, control label, server, everything's the same, text box. Let's do the next one. Email. Oh, yes, same thing. Email's got to have a different client mode. So this is going to be email, right? So see if you can type this in. Why am I doing this again? I'm making a template, right? Remember I told you about this? I want to make a template so that way I don't have to type this ever again, all this stuff. I want to make a template so that next week we get together when we're doing database, right? That it's all done for me, right? I just have to kick off a template and I'm ready to go. I can modify my template. In fact, we'll make a new template off our template. Okay, so I want this thing to be of type email, so I can do, if I say client ID mode, right, is equal to, and you can see that this is not the right one. What's the right one? Text mode, I'll be okay. Text mode is equal to, are you sure it's text mode? And then email, here it is, right? Text mode email, right? And let's copy this again, and now we're gonna need another one. So contact form, right, which is going to be another text, right? So I might as well copy this one. This is closer to that one. Because contact number is not an email, it's a contact number. Now, you could put a number, like the numbers as well, like phone number, like phone. That's another option. So let's take this one and put it in here. And instead of email, we'll say contact number, right? And instead of email text box is contact number text box. Contact number text box. Take this whole thing, copy it, and put it here. Still a form control, but instead of email, right, we'll use IntelliSense to get the right thing. You can see that there's a probably going to be a phone. There it is, right? Phone for the type of thing. So it brings up the right keyboard. This is not going to be email anymore. It's going to be contact number for your placeholder. Also, from a controls perspective, one thing we're missing is required, right? So I'm going to say each one of these things is required. So we'll say required. This is from HTML is equal to true. You put it like this. Remember we talked about this, right? Because otherwise your form elements will not be required. Questions around security. So here's a question for you. Can I disable HTML5 front-end security so it stops me from having required in the document? Is there a way of doing that? No. HTML, the end user goes through and he looks at I go to debugging mode and I go through and I disable the HTML5 validation controls. Can I do that? Can I disable the JavaScript validation? Therefore, I still need server-side validation, because if I don't, I can mess you up, right? I can put whatever I want, whether there's HTML5 on the front end or not. Client-side controls are a convenience, right? They are not assurance. There still has to be validation on the back end for proper validation techniques to occur. Otherwise, what's going to happen is some smart hacker is going to get onto your site and hack you and do a SQL injection or something else, some other kind of attack, right? So please don't. These requireds are for the common man or woman, okay? They're not for a hacker. Hacker is going to get around HTML5 validation and JavaScript validation, all right? All right, so let's continue. I just want to say that because I don't want you to think that this is enough. It's not enough. And that's why we do server-side validation. Okay, so in here, form group control, instead of contact number, we're going to make it a message text box. That's what this is. Message text box, which is your message. Okay. Message text box, and we're going to plop it into our ID message text box. There it is, right? We're going to change from phone to multi-line. That was a suggestion that came out of last week too. Line. Give us our text area. That's what that does. All right. Contact number. And again, it's a server control, so it's a form control, so it acts the same way. Instead of placeholder as contact number, it's going to be your message. The message goes here. And then required is true, because you need to send a message. And there's no point sending a, putting it through without a message. So we got everything here. We need a button now. And I want to add two buttons, a cancel button and a submit button, yeah? Could. That would be nice, yeah. So you're talking about columns, right? Is equal to, let's say, 3, right? Not so many. And rows for this one will be the same thing, maybe 3 rows. Don't want to make it too big, right? Sometimes 5. You have to play with these numbers a little bit. And then what we want to do, thank you for that. What we want to do is we want to put in a button. We want to use a form group again because I want my button to be in a form group, right? But do I? You know, definitely in a div tag with some kind of, remember we talked about this, text right is what we used last time, no? So text-right. And inside our div tag with a text right class, we want to put in 2 buttons, right? Now these buttons are going to be ASPX buttons. Again, this is a great idea for a user control. An ASPX button, right, that uses Bootstrap class built in. So I don't have to do, I can just say BS3, you know, button, and then all of a sudden it'll pull up all the stuff from my button class. But let's do it like this, the long way. So we'll say, you know, it's a button. So ASP button. I'll pull this up so you guys can see. We need a definitely a run at server. Run at is equal to server, right? And we also need an ID for the button. So we're going to make 2 buttons. One is called cancel button. The other one that's called submit button. So my first ID is for my cancel button. It is, right? And now the text for the button is important too, right? So if I go text for the button, that's what this is, right? And we want to put the text button as cancel. It pulls it off, right? Notice that for this button, it doesn't need a closing button tag, right? Now what it emits is something different than this. I also need some a CSS class in here because we want to add a button active or button primary. So CSS class is equal to btn for button, and then button dash primary button dash large, right? So I want to make this a large button. There we go. Actually, primary is wrong. Let's make it warning. Right? Cancel. Right. So we'll do one of those, just a different color. And then from here, I'll put in the next button. But instead of calling it button warning, we'll use button primary for this one, like the blue. We'll call this the submit button. And the text will be submit or send. Right? Maybe we'll call this the send button instead of the submit button. How about that to make it even? There we go. Okay, cool. Let's take a look at our form. I know this looks like, you know, stuff we've done before, but I have to reiterate this stuff over and over again a couple times so that you get it into your, as you type, you know, we learn how to do stuff by doing, like I said, and you can certainly watch, but it's always better to do this. Let's check this out and see if it works. So I'm gonna run it and see if we get everything as is, like the right way, instead of bad ways we've got it before with all these parse errors and stuff like that. And then if it works well, there's our contact page. It's okay. I mean, there's things we can do with it. I can put it inside a well. You know, I can definitely color this a little differently. But you see I've got my 2 buttons. One is a cancel button and one is a submit button, right? Okay. What I want to do is when I click on my cancel button, right? My cancel button, I want to, you know, basically knock me back to my home page. So I want to cancel my contact, right? Also, there might be a place in here where I want to put some other information, right? Like, for example, here's my contact button, but maybe I want to put my address in here somewhere, like contact me at 444-555-6666, whatever, right? So where would I put that? Maybe I want it over here. Okay. I got 6 columns on this side. Got 3 columns to play with on this side, right? Maybe what I want is to push it over a little bit, right? So I give this 4 columns on this side of an offset, but instead of using an offset, I want to put something else in there, right? So for, you know, I got 4 columns. I want to use a container, a regular container, which will give me a little bit of a margin, so it won't be right against, it won't be abutted right against the side here, right? And then my address information is going to be right in here. Hey, another control, right? I know you might think I'm crazy, But you know what? Contact controls, all that kind of stuff. You can build pages up with components slowly, slowly, slowly by creating these components, right? Let's not go too crazy, right? So let's just make what we have to make. I want to modify my page to add in my my contact information, but I want it to be generic enough, right, that I can modify this later on. Right? Now, if it's for you, it's okay. Here's my MD offset 3 and column MD6, right? So maybe what I want to do is, instead of column offset 3, I want to take this offset completely away. Bear with me. Right, so no more offset. And instead of column MD6, I want to keep column MD6, right? But I want to add in another div class before it. So kind of like div with a class of column-MD4, right? So kind of push it over a little bit. We may have to modify this a little bit. This is where my other address information is going to go. Now, beautiful thing about Bootstrap is it has address as well. And you can go to Bootstrap to figure this out, right? So go to Bootstrap. And if I want to look at address for different kinds of stuff you can use for addressing and so on, there is, I believe under CSS, let's get this to the top. If I go to CSS, not the component side, and if I want to go to forms, helper classes, I forget what it is, but they actually give you an address type thing. Or is it text? It might be text, typography. Sorry. And they talk about body copy and stuff, but there's one, if I'm not wrong, for creating an address. Now you could use address as and I would, for a semantic class, right? I may want to use addresses. There it is. So this is how they do it. They have an address and all this kind of stuff, right? And what they do is from a Bootstrap perspective, you know, you can see the title's phone and so on, right? So let's see if they have some kind of shortcut for address, so like BS address, so BS dash address. If not, I can always look at the snippet. Oh, it doesn't come up. So let's try this out. So right click, and I'm going to go insert snippet, and then let's look at Bootstrap, right? And then see if there's an address, and there isn't. It would be up here at the top for address, right? So there really isn't that kind of thing. They give an example of what an address would look like in here, but I got to put in my own. So let's copy the one that I see here as a basis. So let's copy this, right? Mail to, see this thing here with strong, my full name, and mail to? No, no, no. I'm not going to put that in stuff here. Definitely this piece, for sure. I'll put this address piece in here. This bottom piece is going to go, you know what? Not going to happen, right? So this is what's going to happen. I'm going to be able to click on this, and then your robots will spam you to death, right? So please don't let that happen. Your bots. You know, they used to say, what is it? I had a colleague of mine who said there's an app for that, right? Everyone says there's an app for that, right? And now, you know, the new one is there's a bot for that, right? Not lying. There's a bot for that. You want to hack somebody's site? There's a bot for that. Want to drive somebody crazy? It's a bot for that too. All right. So obviously, Twitter Inc. is not what it's going to be. It's going to be your name. You know, so my name is going to be here. You can put your name, right? And then, you know, my address, right? So you put in your address, like, you know, 1 Toronto Drive, right? And then you know, you're going to put in Toronto, Ontario, or Barrie, Ontario, case, Barrie, Ontario. So Toronto Drive and Barrie, Ontario. Yay! and then put some kind of funky, you know, we'll use L's 9L. 1L0, there we go. That doesn't exist. Some kind of weird thing. And then a phone number here, instead of P for the phone, maybe we use tel, you know, sound like we use telephone for abbreviation. And then you can put in the you know, 705, you know, 555, oops, too many fives there, 5555, oops. There we go. All right, so we got that address in there. That's what it's going to be, and it's going to be column MD4. Now, that might not look exactly how I like. Maybe I want to put this inside of a well or inside of something else, another container, to color it differently, right? Because right now there's nothing, and we'll decide this in a second. So let's try this out, see how it looks first. I'm taking such care to do this because I want to use this as our template. I don't want to ever do this again, right? So do one good time, and it's done. All right, meh, I don't like it. It's too small, and it's in the corner. It did push us over probably too much. I probably would have liked to see this a little bigger, right? So we can do some, manipulation here to make it bigger. You can see that it's telephone number for an abbreviation. We just took the exact same thing. That's neat, but not what I was looking for, right? Okay, let's put this into some kind of other form, like a well or something like that, or some kind of panel, right? So where do you find panels? It's under components. So we go to this, go to components, go down, and you can see that there's panels and wells. There we go. Here's an example of a panel, right? Panel default. I've been using primary, so I'll probably use panel primary with a panel body and some kind of, you can also use a header as well as a panel body. So the header might be address, right? I like this idea too. And we can break up everything in here inside of our address information. Now, so instead of doing a traditional address, I'm just going to use a panel to make in my address my own. So I'm just going to copy this. Again, I like it, but I don't like it. And again, you guys have to make it, you guys have to think about how to make your page look as funky as you like, right? To me, I'm just experimenting with you guys here. So I don't like this, what I put in here. Let me just put in my little well for a second. So copy that well in there. And let's fix up actually we'll just, yeah, I can do that here. I can do this and then right click, I'll go format selection. And so this is the panel that I want to add in there. I want to take my address information and put it in here. So panel, instead of panel default, we'll use panel primary, so that's going to be the blue color. My panel title is going to be, contact info, right? And then my panel body, right, will have my address information. Let's see if that works. So click this, contact. Bootstrap has designed to do, right? Okay, there we go. Let's see what that looks like. Okay. Now you can see that there's opportunities here, guys, like for user controls. So I want to make an address panel, right? It would be an address panel user control, and then it wouldn't take all this space up. It's hard to read this whole thing going all the way down. I could break it up, and I can use this whole thing, right, as something that I want to put in. Let's try this out. And see what we get. We're going to be satisfied with this one. Better. I think I want to push it down, though. What do you think? I think probably pushing it down might be a good thing. Now, there's a couple solutions. Here, still not really happy with this piece, too small. What it's doing is it's lining up with the top of my H1 tag, right? Because my H1 tag for contact us is here, right? So what I really wanted it to do, going back to this, we're there, we're almost there, again there. Contact us shouldn't be here, right? Contact us should be at the top. So it shouldn't be in my, oops, it shouldn't be in my column 6, right? It should be right at the top of my container, right? Before my row, or within one of my containers, maybe my column NB4, right? Or in a row of its own. An example of that would be div with a class of row, right? And inside my row, I would have 12 columns, right? The whole 12 columns, and it would be centered, right? So column, that's MB, MB, that's 12, right? And then that's where my, oh, let me do that. And can't do it the same way. If a column dash MB dash MD12, let's say, or 8, whatever you want it, maybe 8, with an offset of 4 on the left. So let's say something like column dash MB dash offset dash 4, and then with some kind of text centering. We'll look at that in a second. And then put that here, and then inside here, we're going to drop in our contact us. So that would be at the top, and it would push down row and this other one, right? It's not going to be centered, but it's still going to be at the top of our page. Take a look at that and see what that looks like now. Guys, I know that I'm playing around, but the idea is this is what you need to do with your CSS, layouts. And I mean, the proper way to have done it would be for me to have lined everything up, looks a little better. I'm not quite happy with this, so I could put an offset. Also, this is taking up way too much space, right? I probably don't need this, or at least take away this address information, just make it a div. This address seems to be making this a little bit small for my liking. Am I going to play with this any more than this? No. I don't have time, right? But contact us seems to be hitting right exactly where I want it to be, right? And it's also putting my contact info down. All right, so let's continue. So I've got my contact form pretty much where I want it, minus some other alterations. Maybe I want to put in another little panel here with my, and I can use Font Awesome to do that. So things like my Facebook Connect, my LinkedIn. They have Facebook and LinkedIn icons you can use to connect with me in this little panel right here, or another panel underneath that says connect with me on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, social network panel. We can certainly do that. But what I want to do is when I click mine, it's hard. When I click my cancel button, I want to get out of here and go back to my ASP.NET webpage, my home page. So let's do that now, program that in, and then I'll save all this, the whole thing as a template. Okay, let's do that. So we have two buttons. Right now I have a cancel button and a send button. And what I want to do is on-click, the on-click event, right? So when I use my on-click, right, I want to point this to a new event. Here's my new event. And I want to call this thing my cancel button click. It just creates it for me because of my ID, right? Oh, give it a second. It's formulating. And I want to do the same thing for my other event, right? So again, by the way, if I was ever doing things with JavaScript, I would never do it this way. I would use, add event listening, right? It's a better way to do it. But here we're using Microsoft's ASP.NET. All right, so I want to create a new event for this one too, right? On click, a send button event. There it is. So now I have two events, and that they're in the code behind file for my contact page. Here they are, right? So when I cancel, I want a response redirect right away. I don't want to do anything else. Response redirect to my main page, my default page. Response redirect to where? My main page. So default.aspx. I want it to do. Okay. On my send button, you can put the same thing in here. But what I want to do is some validation, right? But for now, when we click my send button, when it allows me to, right, I want to do the same thing. So for now, both are the same. You won't tell the difference. Cancel. Right? Because there's not going to be a working form. Here you put in, this is temporary. This is, you'd replace this code with, you would replace this code with email processing code. This what you would do. Whatever the email processor you use, probably connect to SendGrid or something like that here. Okay, so this code behind file is done. We're almost there. Let's go back to my contact ASPX page. There's a couple things we need to do. So we talked about validation, right? And what I want to do is validate on the server side. What I want to do for sure is my first name and last name, from a control perspective, I don't want them to have one character, right? So they have to have more than one character. How do I do that? And there's a set of controls here we did before, remember in the beginning? Right, so I'm going to list some spaces here because we're going to, at the beginning, I'll be okay. We're going to put some controls in here, validation controls. You can get them from your toolbox, right? This is the second part of today, right? Now there's different ones. A custom validator we can put in, a range validator. You can think about this. A range validator, is that the right thing to do? Can we put in a range validator? Required field validators, definitely. And I'll tell you why, both on the front end and on the back end. Because, again, we can turn off front end validation and we can just set everything, as nothing. If a smart user wants to hack your site, maybe that'll break your site, right? Because if you submit something with 0 values and no validation whatsoever, it'll come into the back-end code and it'll crash your site, literally crash your whole site from that form control. That's not good. We don't want that to happen. So we definitely want to put required validators right here. So here's my toolbox. And this required field validator is the least of what we have to put in here for each of these controls. Okay, now, remember what we did last time. We need an ID, right? So this is required field validator 1. Do I really care what this is going to be? In this particular case, I'm going to accept the default, right? Required field validator is the message. That I can't accept. You know, name is required. First name is required, right? That has to happen. That has to be there. And also, what's the other thing that you have is things like back color. I don't want to use that. And control to validate. That's really important. Control to validate, right? So my control to validate here is, what does it point to? It's got to point to a control that exists, which is my first name text box. It's really long, but you can see that what I'm doing, I'm just going to kind of open it up here, is I'm creating this required field validator, and it's got some really long attributes, unfortunately. That's why you can't see it all, right? So ASP required field validator, and then I need to control to validate, which is my first name text box. All right, I need to do the same thing. I could, by the way, I could color it. I could add a CSS class to it, right? I tried this before, right? Now there's some other options. If I look at my pages here, I put in a small section on validation and themes. I'm not going to talk about themes today, but it's there if you want to explore that. When it comes to validation, we have required field validator, my compare validator, a range validator. There's a custom validator that checks an entry on the server using C# validation code. I like this, my custom validator, right? That'll check to see if my length, you know, or anything like that is larger than what it should be or whatever. We can do that. Here's something else. Control to validate, oops, display, how the error message will be displayed. Static is the default, right? And allocate space for the message in the page layout. Dynamic allocates space only when an error occurs. So it doesn't kind of add space in there. It actually pushes everything up, and when an error occurs, when it goes away, it kind of pushes everything back down. Yeah, I kind of like it, and I kind of don't. Like, you know, you see those kind of validation controls even out there, like even on a professional site, you see that happen, where they open up and close if you have something going on there. Personally, I like the floating type of controls better, but I don't have a choice here. Enable, disable, enable client script. Whenever the validation will be done on the client, indicates whether the validation will be done on the client or not. Set focus on error, right? So indicates whether the focus will be moved to the control if it's invalid, right? So do I put it back to the control again or not? Not the validator control, but the original control that is validated. And I think that's really cool. I think we should put it back to the control that it needs to validate. So I think set focus on error is important. Let's do that. We'll do the first one, and we'll copy the other ones all the way to the end. So we'll say set focus on error is equal to true, right? So if it doesn't validate, you know, now remember, we have front-end validation that'll make me do it, right? But the back-end validation is equally required. All right, and then validation group indicates whether the group of validation control is part of. We don't want to do that because we don't care about that. But display, I got to think about. Display. Should I, you know, should I make it so that it's dynamic or static? When it comes up, it says, you know, validation required. If I make it static, that means I got to allocate extra space for my control, right? And an example of that would be, let's take a look at my control layouts the way they are now. If I leave it like, I've left it like this, let's take a look what I get. This is physical on the page, right? So there's one part that you can see physically that there's going to be, there should be pre-allocated space between my controls, right? See? There's no space here, but there's space here. So do you want it like this, pre-allocated? You're saying, right? But the good thing about this mode is that it won't change your layout. Your layout will remain static, fixed like this. Or, let's switch back for a second, right? Or if we use display is dynamic, right? So I'm just going to put it at the beginning because it doesn't really matter where you put these things. For a second, if I say display is equal to, and we say dynamic, by the way, there's also none, which is crazy. It means you can do it on your own. So it means. Okay, this, and let's see what that gives us. Control F5 for run without debugging, right? Maybe a little faster. So from a validation perspective, you can see that there's no space allocated, right? If I click on send, it's going to say both things. Field name is required, plus please fill out this field, front end and back end. So you got to think about it. Do I want my front end controls, if I need server-side validation anyway, do I want to put both in there? If I click on this again, watch. Highlights the field, that's what I wanted. And then, please fill out this field, right? And then it abuts this thing, like it's right there. Like I need to use my own custom CSS here to fix it. Like I need to move this down, do something, whatever, right? Because it's not pre-allocated. And if I was to put in we tried this last time with Bootstrap, the problem with the Bootstrap warnings and all that kind of stuff, right? And this comes back to alerts. I want to use my Bootstrap stuff, right? Like this, right? Well, certainly I could do something like my div, my class is alert, and this is my an alert of any kind, alert danger, would be the one I want. So it's a CSS class alert danger, like red, right? So let me copy this for a second. I showed you what this did last time, but now we're using dynamic allocation as opposed to static. So it should push everything out, right? Let's see. So we'll put another CSS class in here. Like this is how complicated it can get. And then I'm just going to pop this in there, and let's get rid of all this. Popping errors. All right, so CSS alert danger, save, and then we'll run it again. Control F5, run without debugging. This other instance, and we're here. We'll press send, and we get that. Didn't work, right? So that's not going to happen. What else? What else can you do? Was that? That is. Are you talking about this? Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. So don't do the first alert. That's what you're saying. Let's see if you're right. I don't like these kind of fixes. I don't know what school did you come from? Kind of fixes. Although I like your thinking, I like your creativity, and whatever works for us. I mean, we're being lazy here. What I really want to do is we should use CSS to reposition everything. But I'm trying not to use any CSS because it's not a CSS course, right? But yes, but then I would play around with it a lot. All right, let's try this out. Alert danger and Control F5 for run without debugging and see if our friend here is telling us the truth, right? So send. Okay, I'll accept it. Right? It's acceptable. It's acceptable. Okay, I like it. It's not perfect, but it's acceptable, right? So if I write my name in here, let's try this out. So I go Tom, and then it disappears, right? And then you see it shifts my layout a little bit, but I think it's a better solution than what we had. All right, so that's pretty cool. I am doing that is validation from inside. Yeah, that's just checking that I have something in there, right? It doesn't check how big it is, right? All right, so that's one. Cancel will take us back, right? Cancel doesn't even work, right? That can't be, right? Cancel should redirect us, right? When I click on cancel, right? How about if I just do this? If I take this out now, right, and then I click cancel. Man, what the hell? Okay, hold on. Let me refresh. Okay, let me click cancel now. That doesn't work, right? So that's not the correct result. That's not what I want for here, right? So what I wanted to do is immediately take me back out of here without submitting the form, right? So let's figure that one out too. Because that once we start adding validation controls in play, you have a solution?
Yeah, if you use an anchor tag rather than a button and you use the aria with the class button, it will still appear the same and you'll see that right.
This. Yeah, but it's not an ASP control, what you're saying. So let's try that out. So I like your solution, right? So John's saying let's not use an ASP button at all from the cancel. So you're saying, correct? And we want to use an anchor tag. Now we're just going to make a regular anchor tag here with a. We're not going to use server control here at all. So no server control, right? But that means that we'd have to use an anchor tag with an href, right? That's what you're saying. Yeah, that may not work in all cases, right? Because of use state, all right? So be careful when you try and do that. That's why we need to use, if you're going to just start using buttons, be careful. I'll do it for you, okay? But that means that now it's not a server control anymore. So it's now just a CSS, so it's a class, right? That's what you're saying. So class, button, ID would be lowercase, right? And then we wouldn't need our text. That wouldn't be in here. It would be inside the, in fact, you don't need any of this stuff. And then what you'd have is a closing tag, anchor tag like this, and an href tag, which we put anywhere we want. But let's put it here. Href. We'll put it in there, yeah. Href, we'll put it href as default.aspx as a redirect, and then cancel. That's what you're saying. I like it. Anything that's easier. But it means we have to take, okay, we have to go back to our, in order for us to kill that perfectly, we should go back to our contact CS file, if we're going to do that, and get rid of this. Because that doesn't make any sense. Why we don't need this if we don't have a button, right? That would be bad. It's a waste of code. Let's check this out, Control F5, because that would be really bad, right? Because validation. If it's not a button, the form doesn't see it as a button, then it doesn't validate. That's why it worked better for us. So cancel, yes. Thank you, John. Nice solution. Okay, I think there's another solution too with the button, but we'll go with your way, right? This does work. I like it, but we definitely want to get rid of. We want to do this first name is required. We want to do from all these things at the bare minimum, and we need to make some custom controls for first name, last name, and even, well, email. Again, we got front end validation, but we almost want to use, regular expressions here for both email and contact number, right? So it's a different kind of control, a regular expression type control, which I'm going to detail probably next week or some other week, right? Because regular expressions requires kind of half a class of its own, right? It doesn't make any sense for just that. You guys done it regular expressions at all? Yes, some of you. Yes, not really, because most of you said no, right? Which means you kind of didn't do it. You probably did it on your own or learned it somewhere else. Yeah. On regular expressions, wonderful. It's awesome. But what we want to do is, what we want to do here before we end for the day, is I want to copy this required field validator at the minimum so it does the required field validation and just change the stuff that's not, in there. Let's do this really quickly. So I'm going to put them all in, one. And I'm going to just keep sane, I'm going to make this really small so I can so it doesn't bounce back and forth because that'll drive me insane. Probably drive you insane too. Still not quite small enough. I don't care how small I have to make it right now. And we'll just kill one of these too. Still going to do it? What? No, I've refused. And, sorry, just the stuff we have to do to make things work, right? Even this size. Well, it's really long, right? Like, that's the problem with it, right? And, unless I put word wrap on, which is bad. Don't put word wrap on. Bad things can happen. Okay. Well, like you think that the control is complete, but actually it's giving you an error, right? And sometimes it gives you good. So required field validator 2, 3, 4, 5. That's okay. I don't care. First name, this should be. Last name is required. I'm just going in here really small, and this is email is required. Oops. If you don't put your email in there, and this should be contact number is required. And the last one is your message is required, right? Message is required. Okay, there we go. So all this stuff is required. Save. Let's put this back up to normal size again, and then we'll try this thing out. And then finally, we'll push this out onto the web, onto GitHub. We gotta do that too, right? Are you talking about my button? Oh yeah, that would be really. That's not cool, eh? How come you're so smart, huh? How come? How come? So this would be obviously last name text box. Well, at least I can see it here. Last name text box. This would be email text box. Bear with me, peoples of the world. This would be contact text box, contact number text box. And this would be your message text box. Yay, thank you. Almost was a fail, almost. Okay, it was a fail, but you say, there you go. I'll accept that. Okay, cool. And what about on the button? Don't I need something to say on the button that it has to validate? Like the button has to validate. So if I go validate request mode, or enable causes validation, right? That would definitely be required on the button. Right? So cause validation is true. The button does cause validation. I need to put that on because otherwise, maybe it will, maybe it won't, right?
Maybe you can use that for the cancel button so that you
It's possible. I'd like you to try it. Not going to go and redo all that. Only from a time perspective, like we're timing out, but maybe we could. Maybe you're right, right? But let's try this out. I was going to kill you there for a second, Lucy. I was going to say, no, don't make me do this again. All right, let's try this out. This is Control F5, right? I know it's, when you're driving the ship, people, I want you to try this one time. I want you to come up here and drive the ship, make no errors right in front of everybody, and do no code. You cannot do any kind of work at all. Okay, let's try this out. So if I click cancel, yes. Go back to contact, yes. Send. All kinds of validation here. This is good. This is what I want. And it tells me that I have to put all these things in, right? And my front end validation kind of works too. So if I start typing in my stuff, right? As I type in there, it goes away. I can see that my errors are going away. Tom at, yeah, there it is. And my phone number, right, 555 616 555 5555. And then my message, hello. And now I should be able to send, which will redirect me, okay? A lot of work, but we have this form done, and we can add this in to our GitHub. So we're going to go to, our GitHub. We're going to go Solution Explorer here. I'm going to pin that up for a second. And I'm also going to go to Team Explorer. I'm going to go to Home. I could have done another push for sure. Just want to rush. There's 13 changes, lots of stuff. Notice that I've changed my contact page. I've also added a Jumbotron control. So for now, we're just going to stage everything. And we're going to say updated contact page and added Jumbotron. Jumbotron user control. There we go. Commit staged. Go home, sync, and we'll push, right? That'll push everything up. This is a great stopping place for what we've done. We've done a little bit more validation. I want to keep on talking about the validation stuff. I don't want to redo this again, though. So we need to create a template, and I'll leave you with this. I'm going to go to File. Here's how you do templates. Export template. I know you're going to think this is really exciting stuff. Export. You're going to be amazed, right? Hold on. Project template, I'm choosing project lesson 3B, next. And then you name it, right? Like I like to say template, call this template B, right? Maybe a little bit of a description. This is a template, the first template for section B, right? You can put a custom icon and a preview image and all that kind of stuff if you really wanted to. We're not going to do that. We're just going to click on Finish. And guess what? The template is done. All right? Let's try this out and see where it is. I'm going to kind of click when I'm done. File, Close Solution, right? So the solution is now closed. We don't have a link to GitHub anymore. And I'm going to go File, New, Project. And you'd be forgiven to think that your template is going to appear here, right? It will not. However, it will appear if you go to C#. And I scroll all the way down, you can see that I have two templates, right? Somewhere down here. There they are. Template A and template B. Template A is for the other class. So how does this look? If I click on template B, it tells me a little bit of, this is the first template for section B on this side. And notice that it colors my name already, template B. I can change this to something like, template demo, B, right? And then I can do all this. I can decide to create a directory or not. But when I click on OK, I have a brand new Git repository based on my last project, right? And everything is there. So this is how we're going to start the class. Next week, I'm going to do this. Bring up your template B, right? And we're going to start off our lesson. I'm not going to go and build this again, right? And if you have a problem doing this, or if you've had problems throughout the whole time building this thing, guess what? Go to my GitHub. There's two templates, template A from first class, template B from this class. By the way, your template is more complete. I'm guaranteeing you that template C is even going to be better, right? So I'm going to do this yet again, another 3 hours of this beautiful stuff, right? So guaranteed the last class always gets the benefit because they get everything, all the stuff, all these little changes. I'm probably going to use the A tag, right? Because you suggested it, right? I'm probably going to use your alert only, right? Because you suggested it instead of putting in everything else. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? But all these little things, instead of searching around for all this stuff, boom, it's done. I'm going to save like 15 minutes. Yeah. You finish the Jumbotron. Hold on. We can't let anyone go without the Jumbotron. Let's go back to my original. Hey, people are going to ask this question too. What about if I want to update my template? What do I do? You have to go into your Visual Studio documents, under My Documents, because Visual Studio holds everything under Documents, right? So if I go down to where it says, and this is, I'm using VMware, but if I go to Visual Studio 2015 for Documents, you're going to tell me how to do this because I want to know, right? It's the right way to do it. Actually, you know what? Take a picture of it. Can you take a picture of it? Text me with it. And I'll bring it to the third class, right? So they'll have it, right? Now I better record it here because otherwise everyone wants to know. So when my actual VM updates, please bear with me for another few minutes, and then I'll let you guys all go. Yeah, I'm just having lovely, fantastic times here. Open. Oh yeah. We're just not going to do that. How about that? How about them apples? We just refuse to do that kind of stuff, right? Because you know what? On this particular, on the VM, anything can happen. Okay? See the freezing that's going on right here? Yeah, we don't want any of that. Oh yeah, we don't want any of this stuff to happen. Well, because I'm pushing it to hell, right? The original one. That's my template. That was the stuff I used for my template. I'm going to go to lesson 3B, this one, and pull up my solution. This is my original. What do I do, John? Tell me.
So open up your Jumbotron CS.
Okay, it's on the server side again. Okay, yeah, and then.
So create a variable like public placeholder, and then give it a name like contents or something.
Come over here and do it. So it's a placeholder variable.
So
you're talking about inside your class, right?
yes.
Go ahead, John. You know what? John's driving the ship. John, we're being recorded on YouTube.
Oh god.
I have to give you credits, all right, on YouTube because John is recording the stuff on YouTube. Thank you, John. And try to deal with my keyboard condom because it's it's a very important thing, right? Just in case I spill my coffee or anything, right? People go crazy with my keyboard condom. Just letting you know, right? They go, "What is this thing? Get it out of here! It feels weird." It does. But if you're a Mac user and if you don't have some kind of protection, I don't know. Do you want to spend $3,000 again if you spill your coffee by accident on a keyboard? God no, right? That's why I use it. Oh. Wait a minute. I thought you knew it. Now you're peeking, right? You're peeking, man.
Well, can't memorize everything.
Come on. You're doing well.
And so now in here, if we
Save everything first.
right,
Control S. Good. Now, take away that H1 tag. Take the whole thing away. Good. Leave it alone.
yep, give this an ID. Content.
Oh, and add it to the run at.
Yes. And now we also have to wrap this in a tag.
Somehow I don't, what?
It's the variable we declared in the class.
Oh, I see, okay.
And so you don't have
A what?
you don't have an end button,
End?
like Shift N to select.
It's different, man. It's a different keyboard, buddy.
Very different.
Come on, John. He's suffering. I'm making him suffer, right? I'm making you guys want to paint feel, right? Huh? I'm sorry. I apologize. It's not my fault, right? I'm trying to help. How come it's underlined like that?
Body content is not supported. I
It's
don't
okay.
know.
It's okay.
I have the same thing.
On your Jumbotron.
And in here,
Get rid of that. It doesn't exist anymore. Beautiful.
and so now we go content, which is the variable we're saying out the run at.
Yeah.
Dot controls.
Hold on. How's this fixed?
But see, now if we go body content,
Uh-huh.
it will add any of the body content that you use inside of the, so now that you have this, any content you add with inside the Jumbotron control, it'll go ahead and add that and parse it to content.
Right. Okay, that's a nice solution, John. So, okay, so I understand what's happening. So body content is a placeholder that you're using. You could have called it whatever you wanted.
Yes.
And so now when we go to our default page, what you're saying is now I can do something like H1,
Yes.
right? Let's see if you're right. Still it'll give me an error. You know, hello world or welcome. That's what you're saying here. And I'm not going to get a parsing error, right? Let's see what you're right. John, this is all on you, man. Fails. We'll come back and do another iteration, right? The beautiful thing is, ladies and gentlemen, that even if it fails like this, right? Did you make it work? Did you try it, John, before you come over here?
Yes. It works on my end.
Oh. Thank you, folks. Next week, we'll have a solution. John, maybe you want to send me the details, right? And then, but next week, we'll get together. Remember, next week, first part of the day is a test for 10 minutes. Please be on time. If you're late, you will not be able to write the test. Okay, the quiz is 10 minutes, first part of the week. Remember also that next week, you have to make your SQL Server run. Make sure you prepare that beforehand. And also that your assignment 1 is due on Wednesday night at midnight. Okay, guys, thank you so much. Thank you for your patience, and we'll do it together after.
So the thing I got